Pilot Boys in the building. Welcome to the Pilot Boys podcast, where you'll get the real on all things sports, music, and pop culture. I'm Mecca Don here with my co-host V.
Mamba mentality for life.
Today is February 6th, 2020. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. On today's show, we will talk to the world-famous Buster Douglas as he celebrates the 30-year anniversary of beating down Iron Mike Tyson.
Huge.
And we'll also talk with our resident college football insider, Zach Smith, on about what the heck is going on at Michigan State with the sudden retirement of Mark Dantonio and do a Super Bowl recap. We'll also do some news and notes because we got yelled at for not doing them last week.
I know. I couldn't believe the type of browbeating we got.
Today's show is brought to you by Sacred Sun Topicals, which makes the highest quality, all-natural CBD topicals with a proprietary blend and proven results. Products such as soap, body oil, bubble bath, and now muscle rub with warming and cooling effect.
That stuff feels good.
Need it on my neck, man. Get it on my neck. Great for sore muscles, aches, pains, to shorten recovery time, and more. Visit www.sacredsuntopicals.com for more information. And shout out to our Patreon subscribers. Remember now that our $5 and up Patreon subscribers will get our episodes on Wednesdays a night early. These donations help keep our show going. If you want to help keep us on air, you can donate at www.patreon.com/Pilot Boys Podcast. Thanks
for all those that have donated so far.
Let's go. Where the Pilot Boys at? Pilot Boys, we get on up. We gon' fly, boys, we getting up. So high. Pilot Boys, we get on up. We gon' fly, boys, we get. Our next guest is a former boxing heavyweight champion, the very first man to take down Iron Mike Tyson, and is actually celebrating the 30th anniversary of that fight this year. Please welcome Buster Douglas to the Pilot Boys podcast.
Mr. 42-1.
What's up, man? What's up, Buster? How you doing?
Doing great, man. How you guys doing?
We're good, man. Thank you so much for joining us on the Pilot Boys podcast. Obviously, we've been, fans of yours since we were kids, right? Obviously, watching that historic event. You being from the same city as me, Columbus, Ohio. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and just how much that impacted the world and the representative you kind of became for the city. And then years later, me actually getting the chance to meet you, and V getting the chance to meet you, and us getting the chance to work with you on a music video. And then now here we are talking to you on our podcast. It's been an awesome thing. So one of the first questions I wanted to ask you was actually, how did you get the nickname Buster? Because it's funny, your name is James Douglas, but everybody calls you Buster.
Right. My mother, my grandmother, my mother's mother, she named me Buster. I'm the first grandchild, and I think I got into everything and did everything, and I had no no feelings, so I was all over the place.
Right. Right.
So you're busting stuff up.
Right, exactly. Like, what?
So boxing was a natural career.
The funny thing about it, they encouraged it. They laughed and cracked up.
That's awesome. So boxing was natural for you then. Busting people's jaws was natural for you then.
Yeah, if I wasn't hitting them, I was hitting them with something.
So talk to us a little bit about that too. As you're a kid, I think your story is so interesting because it's not the story that you expect, right? It's the story that's of someone. Obviously, you grew up in a family. I think your father was a fighter. Is that correct?
Right. My father was Columbus' first national Golden Glove champion.
Mm-hmm. So what was that like? Talk to us about that. What was it like growing up as a son of?
Well, it was good. He introduced me to boxing. Actually, all my brothers, I'm the oldest of four, and I took to it. Went to the gym at the age of 10, and a Blackburn Recreation Center in Columbus, in Ohio, and just took to it like fish take the water, man. Got in there and became real good pals with a lot of the kids that was at the boxing center. And, very, very rewarding. You know, won a few Golden Gloves, titles, little 10-year-old, champion, 12, 15-year-old, went to the Junior Olympics, won a state fair title, won about 3 state fair titles, 3 Golden Glove titles, and a pretty extensive amateur career. But just when I was about to go to the national rankings, I stopped boxing and got into basketball and football. Then came back to it at the age of 21 as a pro.
Wow. And did you actually love basketball or football more than boxing, or what was your favorite?
I love all the sports. I played basketball, football, but I really had a thing for that basketball, man. I went to college for 3 years for basketball, on a basketball scholarship.
Wow.
And I really enjoyed playing basketball. But then after my third year, after my junior year, I decided I got the burning desire to box again. So I called my dad and told him that summer when I came home that I wasn't going to go back to school. I wanted to box. And he was like, sure, all right. And that's where it started at the age of 21 as a pro.
That's amazing. I mean, it seems like, one of the things that I admire a lot about boxers is that people who are professional boxers, like, I think it takes the most discipline. It's probably the hardest sport to train for because everything at first is unnatural, right? And the training element of it, like you have to really, really love this sport to commit to it as a professional, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things too, like that I always wondered was, how you felt when you knew that you were going to fight Mike Tyson. When they first told you, Buster, your next fight is Mike Tyson. What were you thinking?
Believe it or not, I was excited because that was my second opportunity to fight for the world title. The first time I fought for the world title was 1987, and it was just a portion of the titles. Fought for the IBF title. It was number 2 contender in the world. I fought the number 1 contender in the world, Tony Tucker. Unfortunately, I came up short in that fight and got stopped in the 10th round. But that just made my desire to be champion. It gave me an opportunity to realize that I could definitely beat champion of the world, heavyweight champion of the world. So I had to go on a 6-fight winning spree. And then I ended up getting another shot at the title, which by then, Tyson was like world beater of all.
Right.
But I was confident that, I had the tools to defeat him, because a lot of times I fought on the undercard of his championship fights, and sometimes I co-feature the fight, which was the fight before his fight. So, I was very familiar with it, and I felt very confident going into the fight that I had the tools to get.
It seemed like a lot of boxers at that time, because he was on his crazy streak, were actually intimidated and scared of Tyson because of this thought that he could literally break all your bones when he punched you. Did any of that play into your thought when you first found out you were fighting him? Was there any intimidation? Because it didn't seem like it.
Not at all, because I knew I had the skills and the heart to challenge him, put up a good fight. I knew if I didn't win, I was going to put up a good effort to let everybody know, like, well, he really fought me, because by the time he fought me, it was like a joke. That's why we fought over in Tokyo, because I think the last 5 or 6 guys he had fought were like, in the corner, just looking totally shell-shocked, like they were facing King Kong or something.
Yeah. And I remember you telling us too a while ago when we were shooting the Undisputed video. You told us that we asked you if there were any surprises when you actually got into the ring, and one of the things that you said that just stuck with me is that he didn't hit as hard as you thought. Is that true? Was that were there any other surprises in the ring when you actually got in the ring with him?
Well, it wasn't so much a guy that I fought against, but I had a sparring partner that was a real good hitter. And you know, his punches was effective, but it wasn't like you were, you know, really being hit by the first time by a punch, you know. But, you know, I've been hit harder, like in a sparring session with a local kid from Columbus, Ohio, that was like a cruiserweight, you know.
That's crazy.
Yeah, right. But I'm just saying, but by the time we fought, he was such a terror that a lot of times those guys were going to the ring waiting to get hit and anticipating to get hit. And that makes the entry more more terrifying, you know, once you get hit, it's like, oh my God, I got hit.
Right.
You know, but, you know, it was all about having experience, and I was an experienced, world-class contender at that time, and I wasn't about to be psyched out by the media.
And how soon into the fight do you feel like you knew, like, oh shit, I'm about to beat Mike Tyson? Like how soon into the fight did you know that?
And you know what, man? It's amazing you asked that question, because it was in the 8th round when I really realized that I could actually win the fight.
Wow.
And that was the round that I went down because I stopped fighting. Because I was looking at him like, yeah, what do you think about me now, boy? What?
Yeah, I heard they didn't even bring an ice pack or anything. They thought he was just going to knock you out in the first round.
Right, exactly. But, you know, I'm really sure that wasn't the first time that happened. You know, it was just that it wasn't challenged before until then, until we fought.
You know, big deal. A lot is made of it. It was the title of the ESPN 30 for 30 that they did on you, of the 42-1 odds. Like, there was only one sports book in Vegas that was even taking bets on the fight, and I think it is the highest odds against in a bet. Were you aware of that going into the fight? Did your trainers make you aware of that? Was that used as motivation?
Yeah, I knew it was. I mean, I wasn't surprised when I heard that, but I wasn't concerned with all that. That wasn't never played a factor in any of my fights about what the odds when one told me about it. Somebody in my camp might have said, well, they got your favorite news fight or whatever, but, you know, that never played a factor. It was just the individual is what I focused on first and foremost.
And how soon did you recognize how huge of a moment this was? Because, again, this is 30 years later, and we're still talking about it as one of the greatest, you know, sports feats in history. And were you able to realize that right away, or was it over the years that you were able to kind of absorb all of that?
It was later in life that realized the magnitude of the win itself. You know, as the years went on, it was like, you know, starting to hear more stuff about what the odds were and what everybody. But I knew it was a landslide, definitely for him to beat me, because of the reason he fought in Tokyo, because with nobody in the United States buy the fight. You know, they were figuring that it wasn't going to be worth it.
Right.
Because it was going to be one of the first early round knockouts for sure.
I actually remember, because back in those days, like when we would go to school on Monday mornings, we would be like, did you see what happened in the Tyson fight? And this Monday, it was like everybody was in a state of shock, because they felt like you had taken down King Kong. And post fight, obviously you said in the 8th round you realized that you could beat him, but post fight, I'm sure your life changed tremendously from where you were at before and after. Can you talk to us a little bit about adjusting to being the man that beat Mike Tyson and being the center of attention suddenly for the entire world?
Yeah, it was like going from coast to first class.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You know, it was a big change, man. It was an awesome experience, I tell you. But the only thing about it was that I never filtered in was the fact that I would have to fight so hard to be even considered to be the heavyweight champion, because of all the things that came along after the fight, with the long channels, the crying and the whining, and they put up a fight. We ended up going to court. I spent the first 4.5 months before I even got to fight Holyfield in court, battling, and I was traveling all over the United States. I had a law firm in New York, a law firm in Columbus, Ohio, and a law firm in Vegas, trying to figure out where exactly they were going to hold the case. Being subpoenaed throughout, my between the fights, and wherever I went, it was like somebody would come up and hand me a piece of paper, and I would think that it was an autograph sign, and it'd be a subpoena,
Wow.
Subpoena.
Wow.
And it really got to me, a lot of stress and strain over that.
It's a lot, right? Like having all the lights on you all the time and the pressure.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I wish I could have handled that a little better, but it happened. But that was about the only thing that really, I really hated to have to deal with.
Yeah.
During my reign as a champion.
Well, that's the other thing too. I was going to ask you too is if when you're part of or create such a historical moment, it almost feels like that everything else that you do is minuscule in comparison to that. That's what you're always going to be remembered for, even though you've lived a full life and done a lot of other things outside of that. Does that get annoying to you sometimes? Like even having to talk about this. I mean, obviously I know you're proud of it, but does it get annoying to you at times?
No, not really. Only thing that annoys me is just thinking back how it all came to an end. It wasn't like how I predicted or felt that it should have been.
Yeah.
Because it was like going into the title fight, basically it was all harmony. Everybody was going with the same focus of beating me, winning the heavyweight title. But after winning the heavyweight title, that aftermath was like a nightmare. And slowly but surely, the best part of the fight, winning the title, was hearing my name being announced as the new undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. But shortly after that, it was like chaos. It became chaos and craziness going on during the preparing for the Holyfield fight. It was like we weren't together, weren't in unison.
Right.
Everybody had the people between us, before it was just Johnny, JD, and myself,
Right.
Then by the time we go into the Holyfield fight, it was like we were separated and just, wasn't even speaking to each other. Like you had to go to a person to get to me.
Yeah.
In a short, it seemed like in a short, because I remember a lot of what was happening at that time. It seemed like right after the fight, in a short period of time, suddenly you have a video game. Suddenly you're on WWE wrestling with Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan.
All that was all good,
Yeah.
So that was great things, but it was just internally.
Yeah.
We wanted to do that. You know what I'm saying? It was behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That was so more devastating than what you project out in the public eye. But all that was all just part of the process of being a new heavyweight champion of the WWE and the new game and stuff. That's expected as well.
Right.
So what wasn't because it was just the unity wasn't there no more. It was just because all of a sudden now you are it. You are the man. You are the boxing.
Right.
And everybody's trying to get in, and it'd be the same people that thought it was a joke when you're going into the fight are the ones that now kissing your butt.
Right.
Trying to get close.
Right. Exactly.
I'm telling you, man, it was like, this is ridiculous to see people lower themselves just to get a few dollars,
So now that you've had time to reflect back kind of on that time period, what are I don't know, give us a couple of things that you feel like you would have done differently if you had this situation over again, or let's just say you were advising a young.
It would have been a lot more better. It would have been better communication.
Yeah.
Because it was like, we stopped talking to one another. It got overwhelming. It was just, cause you see it, but you still can't believe what's happening, but it still goes on. And, it's like, it's ridiculous, man. People are just uncanny, man. They would do anything for that dollar bill, boy.
Yeah.
And that was the worst part of life that you can expect, and that's what I was seeing. You know, it was just like, man, they would do anything just to be in your presence and stuff.
Yeah.
Lie, cheat, you know,
Right.
it's unbelievable. I tell you what, man, it's been nice now these last few years. It seems like it's getting better and better for me, you know, now. But I tell you, looking back, it's like, boy, oh boy, was that ever something?
Yeah.
You know, and you get ones that do it well because of their experience, and they got it together, man. They only have people around them that's focused on one thing, and that's you.
Right.
And that was the main thing that I felt that during the time was the focus wasn't on me. It was like I was just a part of the process.
Right.
And I'll be damned. We're gonna let that allow it to happen.
Yeah. This is fascinating because I think, you know, a lot of people hear, you know, the kind of ups, right? Oh, the guy that beat Mike Tyson, but they don't really get to hear some of this, you know, integral stuff that you're talking about kind of the mentality and how loyalty was probably tested at that time too, even with people that you're close with.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that we wanted to ask you about too during that time period was, you know, some of the, you know, obviously, like you said, things didn't go necessarily the way that you wanted them to go, but there were some good moments as well. So talk to us a little bit about some of the positive things that happened during that time. Some of the exciting things.
The coolest experiences or people you met that were your heroes.
It was great. We got to be on David Letterman, Night Show, the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
I mean, it was awesome. You know, it was awesome. I'm telling you, it was like being in the basement, go straight to the penthouse. That's what it was. I mean, you know, he wasn't flying commercial anymore, flying private planes and stuff, and get on the plane. Everything you ever asked for or everything you ever wanted would be on the plane.
Right.
Did you play your video game? Did you play your video game?
Yeah, I played it a couple of times. You know, it was awesome, man. I tell you. Yeah, that was a real treat. But, you know, it was just awesome experience, but it was just so much left on the table, man. I want to eat it all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like you've been able to capture some of that or to recapture some of that. You know, like this week, you guys, for example, you guys are celebrating the 30-year anniversary. There's a huge, you know, weekend planned in Columbus, Ohio, and, you know, Archie Griffin's involved, and it's a whole thing. Talk to us a little bit about that. What do you have going on this weekend and this year?
It's going to be an annual event. The fundraiser will raise money to help the youth out in Columbus, Ohio, inner city kids, and you know, I'm really looking forward to you know bringing better things to that as well. And I'm super excited about the first annual event, and it's just something that you know, I'm gonna tell you how it started. My youngest son Arthur decided to start a clothing line, Only My Best, and you know, he told me about his idea of his project, and I was like, well, that's great, man, go for it. And here we are today, you know, some 2-3 years later, hosting an event like this magnitude. And it's only been getting better and better, you know, the clothing line itself. But it's branched out now into, you know, fundraisers, and we got associated with Brightway. It was Archie Griffin and his brother Ray, and two outstanding individuals, as you well know. And you know, it's just it's a beautiful thing. I'm really excited and happy to be a part of it. And I look forward to having a great night. It's already sold out.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
One of the things, you know,
and this, you know, this is definitely gonna be an annual thing, and you know, just super excited about it. It's gonna be a great weekend.
One of the things that when we met you for the first time, we met you at the community center. One of the most admirable things that Mecca and I have taken from you is what you're doing to give back. You're in the community, you're giving kids free boxing lessons. Like, you're not just always thinking about yourself and your bank account. And for the city of Columbus to have someone like you who represents what you do, to do what you do, is something that we just respect so much about you. And this event seems to be an extension of that.
Well, thank you, man. But it's all about, I have to give it to my mother and father, because growing up in their household, that's what they were all about, sharing and being helpful to their neighbors. And it's just something that's been instilled in me from birth. And, it's something that just comes out naturally. And then to hook up with the right people now, it's awesome, man. It's just a great thing, and looking forward to doing much more.
Awesome.
One other thing I want to ask you about too, before we get you out of here, also is your relationship with Urban Meyer and Ohio State football. Seems like that's something that's also pretty important to you. Have you always been a fan of Ohio State football?
Oh, big time. Growing up in Columbus, Ohio, and not be a fan of Ohio State Buckeyes. Hey, look, something that could be all around.
Right.
Even in the tough years with those Michigan losses. And I've got friends, man, sort of friends, that were like jumped the fence and started going with Michigan. Now it's like, don't even try to come back over to
Right.
You want to get over here, you couldn't take those losses and struggle through the hard times.
Right.
Like whatever, man. And me personally, true Buckeye, all for one and one for all, man. It's a beautiful thing. It's a resurgence of the Ohio State Buckeyes, and to be a part of it is awesome, man.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Before we get you out of here, we got two things that we're going to ask you, right? One is related to sports. Who are your top 5 boxers?
The top 5 boxers?
Yep, of all time.
Well, I like Pernell Whitaker.
Sweet.
Rest in peace.
Tommy Hearns. Manny Pacquiao.
Wow.
And Wilder. I like Wilder.
You like Wilder? He's interesting to me, man, because I'm not sure what to make of him. It's like, I'm not sure if he's a good boxer, but I know he's got that power.
I'm going to tell you what, man. He's a big guy. These guys now, 6'7", 6'9".
Yeah.
And he be 6'7", 6'9". He's not too bad, man. He's got the heart of a lion.
Yeah.
And he will attack. I'm looking for him to retain his title and knock Fury out again. I was at the first fight.
Oh yeah.
That was a battle, and so the second fight is even gonna be tougher because
Fury's good. He's no punk.
Yeah, he's excited about it. He figured out some things he didn't do in the first fight. He's gonna try it again, but I think with Wilder's aggressiveness and his overall power and ability, he'll come out successful again. Because Wilder can take a punch as well.
Yeah, he can.
And he's tested and he's fought who's who in the heavyweight division, and he got rid of him. So I look forward to seeing him do it again in this fight, this rematch.
Right. And actually, what is your kind of opinion on the current state of boxing and how boxing has changed?
I think boxing is standing strong, holding its own, and doing very well. Got a lot of outstanding upcoming fighters in a lot of different divisions that are coming up with ability and skill. And we're going to weather the storm and, remain to be number one on the top sports franchises in America.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, one other question before we get you out of here is your top 5 favorite musicians of all time. And just, it could be any type of music, musicians that influenced you over your life.
Top 5
musicians.
Oh, musicians?
Yeah. Put you on the spot here.
Oh, I like Herbie Hancock, Roy Ayers, George Clinton, the Gap Band, and Prince.
That funk had a lasting impact on you, huh?
Dayton had Confronting, Heat Wave. They were just loaded with talent in the 70s and 80s, and they were right down the street from Columbus, Ohio. Dayton, a bunch of groups come out of there. very successful.
It's so true. And there's so much talent in Ohio and so many different areas. And that's one of the things, obviously, we like to do on the show is kind of highlight that. And obviously, you're one of the biggest things ever to come out of Columbus, Ohio. So we are so grateful to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Buster.
Thanks for having me, man. You guys do a great job. Look forward to listening to your show and seeing you be more successful.
Thank you very much. And good luck this week. Have a good weekend. Hopefully, we'll catch up with you soon.
Governor, look forward to it, man. Let's get together when you come in town.
Okay, cool. Take care, man.
Take care.
Bye.
Love the Pilot Boys podcast? Support us on Patreon. Supporters can pledge as little as $1, and we have some cool perks on there. Check out www.patreon.com/Pilot Boys podcast. Show us some love today. You're listening to the Pilot Boys podcast, episode 13. Time for some news and notes. V, we got in trouble last week for not doing this news and notes, so we got to get to it today.
I didn't know people were looking forward to it like that.
Well, cool. Well, Kansas City Chiefs, who play in Missouri, by the way, they won the Super Bowl. I'm happy for Andy Reid. How'd you feel about it?
Same thing. I'm happy for Andy Reid, and I'm also happy for Patrick Mahomes. Kansas City, it seems like the Hunt family has a deep history in the NFL, and this was well earned. It seems like a real football town that appreciates the victory. And I think, we all like to watch greatness unfold. And I think it's great as Tom Brady retires for us to have Patrick Mahomes coming in.
Yeah.
To kind of carry that torch.
It's crazy because, this is his third season. Really his second full season starting. This is like 15 more years of this that we potentially have. So it'd be interesting if there's someone who can catch Brady in terms of rings. It's probably going to be Patrick Mahomes. Speaking of football, Mike Thomas wins Offensive Player of the Year. Man, that's crazy to me. First of all, obviously we all know how good Mike Thomas is. I think anyone who's been watching football for the last couple of years knows that. But to win that award as a wide receiver,
that's happens.
Never happens.
It's quarterback.
Yeah. So shout out to him. Obviously, speaking of Buckeyes, Nick Bosa won Defensive Rookie of the Year, which is the third OSU player in 4 years to win it. His brother Joey won it, and Marshawn Lattimore also won it. There's a factory coming out of Ohio State.
Yeah, if you want to get better, draft Ohio State players. It looks like.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. College football, Georgia. They spent $3.7 million on football recruiting in 2019. I don't want to single out Georgia because I'm sure that's probably around the number, millions of dollars that are being spent at all the big time programs. But it just shows you how much money goes into college football.
The funny thing about that is the ROI on that $3.7 million that they spent is probably well worth the $3.7 million that they spent, right? So especially 100%. When you're not paying the players,
right? Especially some of these programs are worth like $1 billion. So yeah, if you're spending $3 million a year to get the top talent that, like you said, you don't even have to pay.
And Georgia is one of the best. They never execute, but they always get some of the best talent, right?
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of college football, Mark Dantonio retired surprisingly this week. I guess it's apparently 20 days after he received a $4.3 million bonus. There's lawsuits against him alleging multiple NCAA violations. What were your thoughts when you first heard about Dantonio retiring?
A couple thoughts. One is Michigan State is facing some real karma for all the bad shit that it seems like has been going on at that school and that program. That's not the only reason they're in the news for bad reasons this week. Mm-hmm. But very, very shocking because on the surface, it seems like Dantonio's a very clean-cut guy that I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for since his Ohio State days.
Yep. He's actually from Columbus, I think, Zanesville.
Yeah, and he's the winningest. Michigan State is a good program, but he's the best coach, it seems, in terms of winning that they've ever had there. 3 Big Ten championships. They gave us all that we could handle a couple different times. It's just unfortunate when you see things like this because you're worried most about those kids who signed up to play for him for 4 years. Suddenly, again, him being able to leave with $4.7 million in his hand with no consequence.
And what's crazy is leave February 4th.
Yeah.
That's like the day before signing day. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do in terms of replacing him as a coach? Who are you going to hire? You're going to steal somebody from another program that's already worked on building their program. And then also, what are you going to tell the kids? I mean, these kids, like I said, I think we're going to see a record number of kids from Michigan State enter the transfer portal. Why would I want to stay there? Like, what am I staying? I don't know who the coach is going to be. I don't know if we're going to get NCAA sanctions. I don't know anything. Like, why would I stay there? So I think there's going to be a lot more that's going to come out about this story in the next coming weeks, and it's going to be crazy to watch.
And the thing that bothers me the most about this is, you're taught in life that if you make a mistake, you own up and you take accountability for it. The number of times that we see these coaches leaving with these millions and millions of dollars after fucking up doesn't make sense to me either. There has to be some consequence for you making a mistake and compromising the program if that does come out. And that shouldn't be $5 million on your way out the door.
Yeah, it's crazy. But that's like how we tried to do on the show, exposing the farce. I mean, that's something we're going to continue talking about. And as this thing continues to develop, we're going to keep following it. And I'm sure there's going to be some bombshell news that comes out about it at some point. On to Ohio State basketball, just want to give them a shout out. They beat the team up north, University of Michigan, this week, which is crazy. I tweeted yesterday that at the beginning of the season, college basketball season, if someone told me that a team who had the following wins might not make the NCAA tournament, I tell them to go jump off a cliff. Cincinnati, Villanova, North Carolina, Kentucky, Indiana, and Michigan, and Penn State. Ohio State has all those wins, but yet they're still struggling to potentially even make the tournament.
Well, I think what's going to happen here is that it's been established that the Big Ten is the best conference in college basketball this year. Mm-hmm. They're saying at least 10 teams from the conference, maybe 12 will make the tournament.
That's crazy.
Because there's been such a decline in the other big conferences, and they're looking at this as just the competitive landscape of the Big Ten. Because if you look at most of Ohio State's losses, or if all of them have come in conference play, right?
Right. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think so.
And it's disheartening kind of to see. I'm a big college basketball fan, but it's hard for me to watch it this year. These teams aren't. I think Baylor's number one, but I don't know what I'm watching yet.
And like North Carolina, teams like that, I saw the other day. I was watching just randomly. The game was on, and I saw that they were 10-11. I was like, North Carolina. Like, if North Carolina is 10-11, that's like Ohio State being 4-8 in football one year. You know what I mean? That's just never happens. So
Roy Williams said, "We're just not good at basketball or something."
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I like about Roy. He's going to keep it real.
Yeah.
Speaking of basketball, John Morant, Steph Curry, they've been going at each other a little bit on social media over the Andre Iguodala thing. Essentially, what happened was when Andre Iguodala got traded from Golden State to Memphis, he basically was like, look, I'm not playing. I'm not going to play for this up-and-coming team. I want to be traded to a contender. So both sides, him and the organization, agreed that he would essentially sit out. So it looks like he might be traded this week. Dylan Brooks from Memphis made a comment basically this week saying, look, I get what he's doing. I understand the business, but I'm ready to move on, And so from the player side, it's kind of they're a little frustrated, well, you should be willing to play. We're ballers too. But from his side, he's like, look, man, I've been in this league a long time. I'm not about to waste, these last couple of years of my career on some young team. So, they've been going back and forth, John Morant and Steph Curry. It's been kind of funny.
A couple thoughts on that. First of all, the NFLPA, the NFL Players Association, needs to go and intern with the NBA Players Association for a year.
Right.
Iguodala is collecting his whole check,
right,
and not playing,
right,
not practicing, sitting at home with his kids. This is like Greenville, right?
Right. Saving his body, and he's going to get traded. I mean, literally, I think this week, he's going to get traded, and he's probably going to get traded to the Clippers or a contender, and the dream comes true for him.
And the second part of this is one of my frustrations with the NBA and how the landscape of basketball has changed since the Jordan Kobe era is that it seems like everybody's just friends. The rare cases you have the Dame Lillards, but first of all, I love John Morant.
Oh yeah,
and I've been on him for a while. Mm-hmm. But he's like a young Russell Westbrook.
Yeah. Yeah, he said, he's like, I've been a fan of Steph Curry's, but I ain't scared.
Yeah. I love them saying, look, having that chip, you're basically, what Iguodala is saying is that you guys aren't good enough for me to play for.
Yeah.
And that is offensive, right? If you're a player and there's a guy that signed to your team that doesn't want to play because he says you guys aren't good enough.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're not winning.
Well, they're the 8th seed. They're sitting in the 8th seed right now, comfortably in the 8th seed.
And so I'm not sure exactly what happened with Iguodala, but I do think that at a certain point, there has to be an obligation to fulfill whatever contract you have. If the team says, no, okay, if the trade deadline passes and he's not traded to whatever team he needs to go to, I do think it is the professional thing for him to show up and mentor these young kids.
They said that they mutually agreed. Him and Memphis mutually agreed.
Well, they need to mutually agree to change that decision if he doesn't get traded because, look, he's making a ton of money.
Yeah.
This team who's trying to learn how to win could
use him.
They could use him.
But he's going to get traded. This thing is going to be off or not.
I don't know. They got less than 24 hours, and the Grizzlies are saying unless they get
the right value,
they're not going to trade him.
So we'll see. Follow that situation. I mean, it'd be interesting to see where he goes. I like Memphis. They're a young team, great team to watch. So we'll see what happens with that.
I love their attitude, man. That's what needs to come back to the NBA.
For sure. NBA, some feel-good news. I mean, in the wake of kind of the death of Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal was at a Best Buy, and he was just there randomly, and this couple came up to him, and they just expressed their condolences to Shaq for losing Kobe, but also for losing his sister. I think that happened also recently, and that was it. They walked away. They didn't ask for a picture. They didn't ask for an autograph or whatever. Shaq goes and finds them and says, "You know what? I like you guys. And they were shopping for a laptop, I think. He said, buy the most expensive, best shit in here that you want, and I'll pay for it."
Yep.
And they were really excited, obviously. And it just that's one of those are the type of stories you hear about Shaq all the time.
Yeah, I think once Shaq is Shaq for a reason. The reason he's successful in all avenues of life. People see the character of the big funny guy, but he's a genius.
Yeah, he is.
He's a genius, and he cares.
He does.
And it's genuine, and that shines through. This is like the latest example. I think he had just bought somebody a house, but he doesn't always advertise these things.
No.
But different things are happening every day.
Yep.
From the women he's interacted with, which are plenty, no one ever has anything bad to say about their experience with Shaq.
And like you said, one thing I think is important that you said is that a lot of times when we hear about these stories, we hear about it from the other side. It's not Shaq showing it or him having a cameraman that's like posting it on his Instagram. It was this couple that eventually asked him to take a picture that ended up posting the story, and that's how the word got out. But I'm sure he does things like this all the time that we never hear about.
Do you think Shaq sleeps?
No. In fact, the other day I watched the interview of him talking about the Kobe death. And he was basically essentially saying that he doesn't, that he's so busy. I mean, imagine all the things that he's involved in.
He friggin' DJs every night too.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, he's and one thing last thing I'll say on Shaq is that I feel like he understands his position and his role in society beyond just business, but like as kind of an ambassador of the game, and also as just a person that people like to be around, people like to absorb the energy of. So he's in a lot of places at a lot of times making a lot of different people happy and providing great experiences for people.
And infinite curiosity. He's always trying something and learning something new. And a lot of people in his position would just sit back and say, you know what, I'm almost a billionaire now.
Yeah. And God forbid, knocking on wood, everything else. But when you think about the kind of celebrity deaths that would be impactful, obviously on the heels of Kobe, I'm not even going to say it, but that's one that would, ooh. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to some pop culture news. Rapper Yo Gotti, he announced that he got out of his label deal and owns all of his masters now. And for me, that's significant because, as an artist, that is one thing that you hear about a lot is all these artists who get into these crazy deals and they're fighting with their label and they're 20 years in and they're so famous and you realize that they're getting, either getting killed on the money. So for him to actually fight and get his masters back, I think that's a pretty significant thing.
Yeah, it's amazing. We talk about college athletes a lot, but the record industry, what they do to young artists, is very, 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 very bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very happy he got his masters back. But the reason he got his masters back is because they've exploited it and made as much money as possible. The one area that I don't understand is they typically give you an advance And then a lot of young artists don't even understand how publishing works. And therefore they're signing over. They're like, oh, I'm getting a $250,000 advance.
Yeah.
But they don't realize the $250,000 advance is like a bank loan.
Right.
And if you don't control your publishing, that's where the money really is in music, is in controlling your publishing.
Yeah.
And I remember back in the day, one of the things I love the most about Michael Jackson that he did was when he bought the Beatles catalog.
Right.
And
that was such a beast.
And he said, fuck you to Sony or whoever.
Yeah.
And I think he recently sold that, just to show you the worth. He sold that catalog back, or his estate sold it back for like over $1 billion.
Oh yeah, that Beatles catalog is worth a ton of money. I mean, so that's the thing. I mean, again, as an artist, anytime I hear any type of story of artist empowerment, I'm happy. I do also understand though, and we talked about this with Lee Bonham before in a different context, but I do understand the label's perspective sometimes, because they are making investments sometimes that they don't ever get back. A lot of artists that we never hear about, they don't get that money back. So I do kind of understand how certain things happen. But again, when I hear an artist fighting for themselves and
winning,
it makes me happy.
Yeah.
Last thing for news and notes, Spotify and Ringer just got a huge deal done. Spotify essentially just bought Ringer. Ringer is a podcast-centric media company run and owned by Bill Simmons. They got tons of podcasts, tons of sports content. I think that deal is going to end up, it's huge. I mean, it's huge.
If you're an entrepreneur trying to be successful, definitely study Bill Simmons, because Bill Simmons is the man in sports right now, in sports media, because he gets it. ESPN did themselves I don't know what happened there, but they did themselves a disservice by disassociating with him. He's not the best on-air personality, but he's a genius behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And nothing but respect, and it's showing the power of the podcast platform and how consumers are demanding and digesting content now differently than in the years past.
Yeah. So that's a big one. Like I said, I don't even know the numbers on that deal. I'm sure it's in the hundreds of millions probably.
Definitely. I mean, I think they did 15 million in ad revenue. So you do like a 4x multiple on that. It's close. You're looking at close,
right.
60 is 4x.
Right.
5x is
75.
So.
Yeah. You're listening to the Pilot Boys podcast. We are here with our college football insider and also podcast host of Menace to Sports, Zach Smith. Welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure.
And thanks for joining us, man. It's been a kind of a crazy week in sports, but particularly I wanted to jump right into this one. What the fuck is going on at Michigan State in football?
Just pure chaos.
Yeah.
Pure chaos. It is, I talked about it after the season. Like, I'm talking December. And I said it was time for Mark Dantonio and Michigan State to part ways.
Yeah.
Just the program had completely fallen apart. They were finishing 11th or whatever it was in the Big Ten in recruiting. I mean, there was no glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
And he refused to make the decisions that he needed to make to revive the program. He wouldn't fire anyone.
Yeah.
He did like the musical chairs of coaches. Like, okay, you coached wideouts, now coach running backs.
Right.
And you coached O-line, now coach tight ends. It's like, it was bizarre.
Yeah.
And then all this stuff came out with shady recruiting stuff, and it's like, this is an absolute train wreck.
So you saw it coming, because here's the thing that's sad about it, right? Especially for people who are Ohio State fans, we're obviously very familiar with him.
We have a kind of fondness for him, right?
Well, he's from Columbus. He went to Zanesville, I think high school. He was defensive coordinator at Ohio State, obviously, before he got the job at Michigan State. And then he went to Michigan State and gave Ohio State fits, for years.
Fits.
And it seemed like he kind of had something figured out. Not just Ohio State, he gave Michigan fits. They went to the playoff. They went to the college football playoff. And they got destroyed, but they went.
3 Big Ten championships.
Winning Big Ten championships. It seemed as though he was going to be a serious force. And then all of a sudden, boom, it seemed like that, that shit hit rock bottom real quick.
Real quick.
And it seemed like you saw it coming.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see it coming when Pat Narduzzi went to Pitt. The reality is their defense was ridiculous. I mean, like, one of the best in the country, both in scheme, in tackling, and technique, and just they were developed. And Pat Narduzzi took the Pitt job because they were so good on defense, and you just watched the I wouldn't even say slow decline. You watched a major decline that never stopped.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of what happened. He lost an absolute stud and didn't replace him with one.
Yeah.
And so now you're looking at, really a shitty situation to walk into. I mean, they said Matt Campbell from Iowa State already turned it down. Luke Fickell already turned it down.
Yeah.
Like,
who would want to take a job the day before signing day? Like,
it's a train wreck.
And that's kind of what I wanted to kind of get into here is like the obligation and the reasoning. There has to be something really, really bad that's coming out for this to happen. Like, have you ever heard of a situation like this where it happens without there being some sort of skeleton in the closet that's about to come out or come hammering down?
Really the only one I heard of, and it was very calculated, was when Bob Stoops retired. He did it after signing day, kind of in the off season. It was like he did it so that they didn't have any options. You can't go hire a coach at that point. And he kind of forced their hand to promote Lincoln Riley because that's what he wanted. That's who he wanted his his successor to be.
Right.
And so it was like, I don't remember when it was. It was probably like March or like April. And he was just like, all right, I retire. And everyone was like, what?
Right.
Like, Oklahoma's like, what are we supposed to do? And he's like, haha, let me show you what you're going to do. I want all my coaches to remain here. I don't want anyone to get fired. So you're going to promote Lincoln Riley. That's your only choice.
Right.
So it was very different situation, but that's the only other time I can think of where it was just bizarre timing.
Yeah. And then also, like we said, it was like, I think 20 days after he just received a $4.3 million bonus, which I think is a little bit shady. And then you have lawsuits out there from, former coaches, it seems like, accusing him of NCAA violations. There's obviously a ton of other stuff going on in the athletic department too. So it just seems like
Michigan State is a train wreck generally, it seems like.
I will say, in recruiting, a lot of players, like mostly players from Detroit and the Michigan area, that's who we battled Michigan State on. Very, very few other places. Yeah. But those kids in Detroit and the state of Michigan, that was a attractive place. Yeah. And kind of the theme was that when they would visit there, when they talked to the players got away with a lot of shit. Like they could smoke weed, they could do things that they knew they couldn't do at Ohio State. And I'm not saying that's why any specific kid went there over Ohio State. Yeah. But that's just the feeling and the theme of what was going on there. Right. And it's just it's started to rear its head.
Yeah. And that's kind of the interesting thing here, right? Is like you guys, with Dantonio, it doesn't seem like he kind of puts out this reputation of being this clean-cut disciplinarian guy that's not willing to cheat. Michigan State is overachieving because he's not willing to do what everyone else is doing to cheat to get the 5-star prospects. That's what we heard about all the time, like this Cinderella underdog story. And for this to come out, it's disheartening because I really like the guy from what I've seen. I don't know him personally, but I rooted for him too because they were whooping Michigan's ass too. Like, right. And I had admiration for the fact that he would come in and dominate us at times, like teams that we had much better talent, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the only program that since Urban Meyer got hired consistently gave Ohio State fits, right? No other. Now there was a loss here or there, but no other program. Every year you're like, here we go. Yeah, not one.
It's crazy.
Maybe Penn State.
Yeah, Penn State too. Those are always like 1-point games, but even and despite the talent discrepancy, right? Ohio State always had more talent
for sure
than them, but he was just a good coach schematically, and he kind of knew what to do, and also a good in-game manager, and then also toughness. Like, I remember talking to Darren Lee and Von Bell after the national championship year, and they said, people think that the toughest game that we played this year was Alabama. They're like, no, the toughest son of bitches that we played this year was Michigan State.
Oh, for sure.
And I thought that was crazy.
On offense, for sure. Their defense was down a little bit that year, but that was what they were known for. And I'm telling you, Pat Narduzzi, he probably will be the head coach at Michigan State, I would imagine.
You think he's going to take the job?
I don't know if it's in such shambles now that he might not. Yeah. But he if I had to pick a guy, he's who I'd pick.
Right. Well, Pittsburgh was 100th nationally in defense before he got here. I think they were 15th last year.
He's a monster.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It seems, and so so now some of the discussion now is what's going to happen to that program. And, we obviously care about it because we're college football fans and we're in the Big Ten. And, people are talking about Luke Fickell taking the job. And to me, I'm like, I don't see Luke Fickell taking that job as it is now. Wow. I think theoretically that could have been a good job for him in different circumstances. But February 4th, after you already had your signing day and you've already, committed to your team and you're already building your program.
And you don't know what fires you're going to have to put out.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I would never in a million years, if I was Luke Fickell, take that job.
No.
And I mean, even, to be honest with you, even without the fires.
Yeah.
Like, why do you want to do that? You're at Cincinnati, hot as shit.
Yes.
You won maybe 2 more years and you're going to get a Notre Dame or you're going to get a big job.
That's true.
Why would you want to go battle Ohio State in a declining Michigan State program? Why?
And you hit the nail on the head too, because he's in a conference right now that he can dominate. He knows he can dominate. He can get a lot of, like, God forgive me for saying this, like that leftover Ohio talent that is really good, but just not good enough as to play at Ohio State currently.
Yeah.
But he's still getting a lot of those players. The transfers he's going to get transfers from, the transfer portal is going to be insane now. Michigan State already had 9 guys in it, I think, before this happened. I can't even imagine what it's going to look like.
Look at all the guys who've leveraged the Cincinnati job, including Dantonio, into better jobs, right?
Oh, it's endless.
It's just a great job, like, and it's underrated. And I think I would really like for someone to, I never want anyone to be better than Ohio State, but for someone to just stay and build something special at Cincinnati,
Right.
because I think
Pat Fitzgerald, right?
Yeah.
What he's doing at Northwestern. I'm telling you who the guy is, Kerry Combs. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
That guy will be Kerry Combs when Luke Fickell leaves, and Kerry will be he's a lifer.
Yeah.
He'll never leave Cincinnati. He'll be the head coach until he probably dies on the field. But you're right. That it's a great job, but it always launches people.
Yeah.
And someone at some point to make them a bigger program, to give Ohio that second team, someone's got to stay.
Yeah.
One thing that's talked about a lot, and I wanted to get your feelings on this, is the lack of competition in the Big Ten and how that impacts a school like Ohio State versus the impression that people have of the SEC. Now that Michigan State is down, which was a key component of keeping our league competitive, do you think it matters? Or
I mean, it matters in recruiting for sure. I was on my show yesterday. I was just kind of went on a rant about recruiting and stars, because you always hear people like, well, that shit doesn't matter. Look at this 3-star. And it's like, yeah, I get it. 8 3-stars are projected in the first round out of maybe 4,000 3-stars in the country.
Right.
So like, you're talking about winning the lottery.
Yeah.
But the 4 and 5 stars are 75% of the draft.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, when you look at that, you look at the SEC, they have projected 15 first rounders. I think the Big Ten had 3.
all
or
from
so.
Ohio State.
And they're all, no, I'm sorry, there was 6. And
Okay.
like a center from Michigan. There was a couple, but then Ohio State, 2 from Ohio State.
Right.
And it's like, when you're a recruit, it's like, I mean, the SEC's selling the shit out of that now.
Yeah.
Like, this is the NFL college conference, right? And the reality is, it doesn't in really affect a kid if they go to Ohio State.
Yeah.
Because they're going to go against NFL talent every day.
Right.
And then they I always used to tell people, you get to practice against first rounders and go against 7th rounders in a game.
Yeah.
You know how good you're going to look?
Right. Garyon Conley told us the toughest person he ever played against in college was Mike Thomas.
For sure. I mean,
He was
and
on the same team.
And you imagine that. And that was my recruiting pitch all the time. It's like, you go against Marshawn Lattimore, Garyon Conley, Eli Apple every day. And then you get to go play against me on Saturday. Like, do you know how easy that's going to be and how good you're going to look?
Right.
You immediately look better than if you go to the SEC.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
it's just, that was my whole pitch, and it worked.
So the piggyback V's question, I guess one of the bigger kind of questions is whether or not, we've talked about this before, but like whether or not the Big Ten Conference being good, elevates us and Ohio State specifically, their chances of year in, year out of making the college football playoff. One of the things that debates that you'll see on Twitter a lot is whether or not we want Michigan to be good and whether or not it's good for the conference or some Ohio State fans are like, fuck Michigan, I want them to win one game the whole year. And other people are like, no, I want them to be undefeated when we get to that game because it makes us look better. How does that, factor in your mind?
I mean, I don't know why anyone would not want that to be like the 1 versus 2 game. Why would you not?
You want to play competitive teams.
Well, and not only that, but it's good for each team if the conference is better, right? It's good for Ohio State in recruiting and everything if the conference is better.
Yeah.
If Michigan goes out and beats Alabama in the bowl game, it's a lot better for the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they go out and get their teeth kicked in, it's horrible for the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And so I can't ever agree with wanting them to lose every game. You should want them to win every game until we play them, and then let Ohio State be the spoiler. And it improves the brand of Midwest football as a whole.
Well, that's the other thing too about like iron sharpening iron kind of as well, is that I feel like, and this is like if you talk to other people outside of Big Ten country about some of the criticisms of Ohio State in the Big Ten, they'll say, look, Ohio State goes and dominates this weak conference all year. But then when they have to go play the big boys, you know, they're not ready for it. They haven't been hit in the mouth like that. They haven't seen speed like that. You know, do you think that's true, or is that overhyped, or what?
They see it every day in practice.
Yeah,
every day. So it just comes down to how many competitive periods in practice are there. And now you're flirting with a fine line. You want your team to have that preparation, but you also don't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
And that's when injuries happen.
Right.
So it is the gray area of coaching, and it's there's no formula for it. There's no book on it. You just have to feel it out and do what you think.
Are there any issues even that you've dealt with internally, like with your players being overconfident, right? Because Ohio State has dominated this conference since Urban got here. For the most part, Michigan State played spoiler. Penn State has a couple of times. But are there challenges in keeping your guys motivated, knowing that every year, like when they play Illinois, for example, they're going to win 41-0,
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is a challenge, and it's definitely a challenge because what can happen is they can get away with a lot of shit that they won't be able to get away with against better talent. Mm-hmm. That's what I dealt with early in our tenure at Ohio State, was just they would go out on Saturday and do shit that you're like, that is not going to work against a good player.
Yeah.
But it worked against whoever.
Right.
And so that's definitely a part of it, and it's tough. But you also have things, especially now, to point to the Purdue game, the Iowa game. You have these games to point to, like you can lose to that team, like you can.
Right.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Because for a while there, it wasn't possible. To people.
And not only can you lose, you can get embarrassed and get your shit kicked.
Do you think that's what happened in that Purdue game?
I think a lot of things happened in the Purdue game, but certainly a big part of it was they were shell shocked because they thought they'd just roll out their game and get out of there with a 40-point win.
Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of internal things going on defense and things like that definitely created it or caused it. But part of it was certainly this Purdue. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
It's like here Purdue smacked the shit out of you.
Right. I want to switch gears a little bit too. I want to talk about the Super Bowl. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs won it. We all predicted that on the show. Applaud to us. I finally got a fucking prediction right on this show. All my predictions
stick with
terrible.
Zach and I, and you'll be all right.
Right. When you picked them, I was like, oh shit!
Oh, no.
I almost switched my pick.
Seriously. And it's crazy because for a lot of that game, I was like, here I go again. I'm gonna be wrong again. But here comes Magic Mahomes. So just again, I know we talk a lot about college football here, but in kind of football like history, this is big for a couple of reasons. First of all, Kansas City winning, Andy Reid winning.
Lamar Hunt.
You spent a year in Philly. You had told us before, so you kind of have a greater appreciation for Andy Reid. And then also Patrick Mahomes, man. I mean, maybe it's people talk about it too much, but it's like this is his third year in the league, and he's already MVP. He's done something that nobody did. Brady didn't do this. Montana didn't do this. And he's already won a Super Bowl, and he looks like there doesn't seem like there's anything that's going to necessarily slow him down. What do you think about
Brady wasn't winning because of his talent?
That's the other thing too. I'll say is that a lot of the young guys that won, like Roethlisberger and those guys that won when they were young, it wasn't because of them. They were game managers of Patrick Mahomes.
There's no doubt. He's one of the most dynamic quarterbacks to come in the NFL in a long time, and I just I think he has such a good perspective on being a superstar, that he's one of those that can be one for a long time. Like we talk about Kobe Bryant's and LeBron James's. I don't know if you saw the story about him at dinner with his girlfriend or whatever in Kansas City.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a true story, by the way.
Either way,
it sounds like something he would do.
What is it?
I bought it.
Yeah.
I bought it.
Yeah.
I don't know the story.
The story was basically like they were in dinner in Kansas City, and nobody bothered them the whole night. And then as he was leaving, he turned to everybody and said thank you, or
paid their bill,
and paid everybody's bill or something like that. Thank you guys for leaving us alone.
To be honest, I don't care if it's true. I'm buying it.
It is Mahomes like regardless.
Yeah, I believe it. But the stuff he can do throwing the football is, just absolutely. I don't know that it's been seen before. Yeah. I mean, some of the things he does with his eyes, his arm angles, and things like that. Like he won't be looking at a receiver and he'll hit him over on the other side, in the middle of the field while he's staring at a safety. And it's like, how do you? I don't even think that's supposed to be possible.
The 49ers did a good job, though.
They did a great job.
As good of a job as you can.
They were getting pressure before for pretty much the whole game.
But then they went to the hurry up, right?
Right. And it's what I said before the game. You you can stop him for 88% of the game,
Right.
Yep.
but that 12% you lose.
Yeah.
And it's like all he needs is like one window.
It's crazy.
And it's stupid. And it's what happened in the fourth
And
quarter.
even
It's
like
just
that third
boom.
and 15, you thought he was done at third and 15, and then he
Yeah.
hits Tyreek for like a 60-yard bomb. So I want to talk about that a little bit more specifically, like Kansas City, because when you look at them, it seems like they have a perfect storm of everything, right?
Yes.
They have Andy Reid as the mastermind. They have Eric Bieniemy, who's just a stud coordinator. Then you have Mahomes, who literally could be the greatest football player we've ever seen play. Like he has that type of talent.
He could be, right,
Like
he
he
could.
could go down that after his career.
Offensive line
and
studs.
speed everywhere. It seems like. So how do you coach? I mean, obviously, if you have a quarterback like Mahomes, is he masking issues, or is it just that he's just, how do you even game plan? How do you even structure kind of your offensive game plan when you have a guy like
Well, that's when it's really fun.
Yeah.
It's like, and I wasn't there for the season, but leading up to the season, I was there. It's like when Dwayne Haskins took over at Ohio State. It's like shit got so much more fun.
Yeah.
Like you're just studying past concepts that you could do, shit that you're like, this kid can do anything. So
Yeah.
what do you want to do?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun.
Yeah.
It is really
And
fun.
it seems like for Andy Reid specifically, right? Like in his whole career, I have my opinion on McNabb. I thought he was pretty good, probably the best quarterback, but he was taking guys like Alex Smith and turning them into something. So it was almost like finally Andy Reid got the mastermind QB to match his mastermind as an offensive game planner, right?
You know what? He really built it, and you saw it in Philly. He did something similar with getting Deshaun Jackson, and he's a speed guy.
Yeah.
And that receiver group is freaking ridiculous. I mean, it's rocket ships everywhere.
Yeah.
And then they did the best job of anyone in the NFL draft of identifying Mahomes as a generational talent. No one else really did.
He said that I don't know who it was. One of his guys told him. He said, "Listen, this is the best football player I've ever seen."
Right.
And Andy Reid was like, well, "That's
Like,
that's
come
a
on.
big
Let's
statement."
not be dramatic.
And so he said the guy would like literally put Patrick Mahomes tapes on his desk like all the time, like
Right.
watch. And Andy Reid said he finally watched and was like, "Oh my god,
This really is
this might be the best football player I've ever seen."
Right.
And now he gets them and is able to, implement them in that offense. And one of the other things that he said in the post-game interview was he said that Patrick Mahomes just keeps wanting more and more and more, and that he can keep giving him more because he can handle it. He's also a smart dude, which I think a lot of times gets underrated as well.
Oh, very underrated.
Yeah. So one last thing on the Super Bowl and kind of Eric Bieniemy, because there is a lot of talk on social media right now about Eric Bieniemy and him, why he doesn't have a head coaching job and whether he's fit. And some people say he doesn't interview well, and then they put out this interview that shows that obviously he's a great interview. What is it that you see in terms of the concepts, the actual concepts, offensive concepts that you see that look different or look like they're dynamic from Kansas City?
It's not that different. I mean, no one in the NFL really, outside of Baltimore, they do stuff vastly different
Right.
because of the freak show they have taking the snap.
Right.
But everyone runs the same shit. It's just who can execute it the best.
Right.
And they have a quarterback that can make all the throws. They have guys that can blow the top off at a ridiculous clip.
Yeah.
And
then Kelsey they just
have this monster tight end working the middle of the field. And it's like, they just have all the pieces.
Yeah.
And so everything they do looks better than most other teams doing it.
Right.
And the thing that kind of sticks out, I think, about the Eric Bieniemy situation is we know how football works. If you are the coordinator for any coordinator for the Patriots because they're so good, you're going to get a job. And the same thing with Andy Reid. I think there are 7 active head coaches from the Andy Reid coaching tree in the NFL. So that's, I think, what makes people start to point toward. Is it because of race that this guy who's at the helm of the best offense in the NFL that just won the Super Bowl can't get a job, though he desperately wants one and has the resume to support it, right?
And I think the reality is, I don't know if it is race. There's definitely a conversation about that in there. But the reality is the NFL's fucked up on every level. Watch the draft.
Yeah.
They'll draft a guy. You're like, the Browns draft Jabril Pepper in the first round.
Right.
I couldn't believe when
fuck
that
is
happened.
Right.
I couldn't
Michael
believe it.
Thomas is the 6th receiver. It's like they do shit at every level, every decision. And most of the time, the teams looking for a coach are really shitty teams that are in turmoil. They have probably like 3 different people arguing over who to bring in, who to hire, and they make horrible decisions.
Yeah, time and time again.
And
And it's funny because the NFL, they get away with it because of the talent, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the talent ends
And it's
up
an old
carrying.
boys club, too.
Right. It's definitely an old boys club.
Once you become a coach in the NFL, you'll always have a job in the NFL.
Well, and then also with the revenue sharing and all that type of stuff, it doesn't, whether you win or lose, these companies are still
Making
billion-dollar
money.
franchises.
Absolutely.
So, everybody, and you would think that everybody has the same incentive, which is do whatever it takes to win. And it's actually not true. I mean, they want to win a certain way, and if they don't win that way, they're comfortable with losing. And that's the crazy thing that you see in the NFL. But I think it's been great to watch the Chiefs kind of build this thing. We saw it happening even a few years ago when Alex Smith was a quarterback. They were doing well. We saw the pieces being gradually put together. And it's amazing, again, they lost all-pro Kareem Hunt. Like, it's not like, they're just throwing pieces together and making it work, So
the Patriots haven't been challenged
in
the AFC for a long time.
Since Peyton Manning left the Colts, pretty much.
What the Chiefs have done is very, very different, but very similar to the Patriots, where they have this stud quarterback, and now it's just plugging pieces in, and you lose one piece, you plug another piece in. And like Patriots always had the little Edelman receiver, and it was like there was like 4 of them back to back to back.
Right.
One of them leaves, you bring another one in, and it's like same offense, same offense, same production, and that's what the Chiefs are doing. Like, okay, let's say Tyreek Hill wants more money and gets traded. They'll just get some really fast guy and plug him right in.
Yeah, they already got one with McCole Hardman.
I mean, if you look at it, like I look back at what happened to Seattle after they paid Russell Wilson, right?
Yeah.
The supposed dynasty fell apart. And it seems like also Mahomes is a reasonable guy and understands that part of what's going to make him successful is probably taking a little less. He's going to make the money off the field, but that's a conversation. He's about to be in the 5th year. Once he takes up 25% of the cap, how do they adjust that?
Well, the other thing too is that also, and this is the last thing I'll kind of say on Kansas City, like structurally, is that Mahomes and Russell Wilson are different because they actually have talent that can mask a lot of different issues. Like Flacco didn't have that, but they had to pay Flacco, and that's a different type of conversation when you know you have to pay a guy who you're like, not really sure about. It's different than paying
He won a Super Bowl, so I have to pay him.
Yeah, so you got to pay him, but he's not necessarily a guy that you could mask a ton of issues with. Whereas Russell Wilson is still having success there, even though they had to break up the Legion of Boom and they're not what they once were. He's still winning them 10 games, still getting to the playoffs. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes also has that type of talent, so it'll be interesting to see. I think we're on. I'm not the only person that thinks this, but I think we're in the midst of watching the dynasty happen and. It'll be hard to see who's going to beat them.
One quick 49ers thing that I read, it was on PTI this week that I want to talk to you guys about. They're saying that the 49ers may cut Garoppolo and sign Brady, and Garoppolo goes back to New England. Like that, because of how poorly he played, just how crazy these stories are.
Let me ask you this, actually. That's a good question. How good is Garoppolo, honestly? Is he more than a game manager, or is he a guy that is just young, that it can literally grow into a real legitimate star in this league?
I think he's a upper middle tier quarterback in the NFL.
Okay.
I mean, I think he definitely he can make a bunch of throws, but he's not that top echelon.
Yeah.
He's not Pat Mahomes. He's certainly not a Lamar Jackson impact player.
Right.
He's not the top 5.
Yeah.
And so to win a Super Bowl, you kind of need that, or you need some freakish defense, which is what San Fran had, right?
Yeah.
A ridiculous defense, great run game, and then they had an upper middle tier quarterback.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that Shanahan's a choker, considering what happened in Atlanta and what happened here? Did the 49ers give away that game that they should have won?
They stopped running. They didn't run the football. And,
12 attempts.
Yeah, Raheem Mostert had 12 attempts. The guy who just had 240 or something crazy, 3 touchdowns the game before, he only had maybe one carry in the first quarter. They were up 20-10, was in the fourth quarter, and they just got away from. I mean, Garoppolo's throwing all kinds of balls. Like, wait, what happened to running the football?
He'll never live down that little 2-hand push pass as he's getting sacked. Like that was the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen a quarterback do. Oh my gosh, I almost threw up when I watched it.
It's just kind of like, I mean, is Shanahan a choker? I mean, it's hard. 2 of your biggest moments.
Well, you're a choker till you don't, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Andy Reid dealt with that until he just won one.
Right. And so now Andy Reid is not. But prior
that's
to
what they used to say about Peyton Manning too.
Right. Prior to Sunday, Andy Reid definitely was a choker. He choked in every Super Bowl, every big opportunity to go win it all.
Yeah. Well, and I do think Shanahan will have opportunities again. I think he's good
That's
enough of a
solid
coach.
team.
Solid team, and he's good enough of a coach. Again, he mixed and matched a lot of different talents and guys, and they did a good job through the draft and through trades.
He's a great
acquire
coach.
Talent too.
You can't take that away.
So I
from
feel
him.
badly for guys like that when that happens, because that's the natural thing people are going to say is that they're a choker.
Yeah.
But the good news is, and this is kind of like what we just said, is that there's plenty of time in the future to kind of rewrite history. So
no doubt.
So we'll see. Anyway, that's great. Zach, thanks for joining us on the Pilot Boys podcast. Make sure you guys check out Zach Smith's podcast, Menace to Sports. It's available everywhere, and you can follow him on Instagram and Twitter at Coach Zach Smith. That's all we have for today's show. Big thanks to our guests, Buster Douglas and Zach Smith. Thanks to everybody for listening. Don't forget, sharing is caring. Subscribe to the Pilot Boys podcast on Apple, Spotify, Patreon, and YouTube. And please follow us on social media at Pilot Boys Pod on Twitter and at Pilot Boys Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. And follow the hosts on Twitter. I am at Mechadon Music, and V is at Viswant.
And always remember, be you. You is fly.
Pilot Boys out!
Where the Pilot Boys at?
Pilot Boys, we get on up. We don't fly, boys, we getting up. So high. Pilot Boys, we get on up.